Well, hello guys. This is Lydia Wente, the lifestyle coach. Very excited about our interview today. And as you know, with us here as we bridge the gap between what we know and what we do, and especially a topic we talk a lot about is, binge eating, emotional eating, food addiction, whatever title you want to put on it. As we talk about recovery, one thing that's just so important is, eating adequately makes so many things a host of so much easier. But then there's this question of like, okay, well, but if I'm eating adequately and I want to lose weight, and we have all sorts of chatter that starts up about that. So really, with the women that I've worked with, the most helpful thing that I have found when we're thinking about, getting rid of our binge eating habit and being okay with our bodies is, instead of changing our bodies to be okay with them, it's a body acceptance of where we are. And there are all sorts of fun things we can go into there. And so today I am bringing on an expert, and we have Kaila Prins with us today, you guys, like the woman. And I'm very excited to chat with her. So I'll bring her on in just a moment, but I want to read her quick little bio. So that you guys can get to know her a little bit. So Kaila Prins is a drag queen trapped in a woman's body, a body-positive burlesque and pole dancer, and a performing woman performing woman. She is also a body-positive wellness and recovery coach, feminist writer and speaker, and the host of the Finding Our Hunger podcast, using feminism, health at every size, and a body positivity to help disordered eaters and exercisers stop recovering and start discovering. So you can look more at her website at performingwoman.com or findingourhunger.com, and I will put all of those links in the show notes so you can find more of her amazingness. But let's hear from her for real, and we have a fun discussion for you guys. So, Kyla, welcome to the show.
Thank you. How you doing?
Great. It's so fun to have you here. So I would love to just start out. We're just going to have a fun conversation and just like see where it takes us. And
sounds good.
We're both fun and fine with flexibility. So I would love to just start out for those of our audience that like don't know kind of your story and a little bit about your background. Mm-hmm. I would just love to hear like from you. So tell us your story, especially relating to body positivity, maybe any sort of like disordered eating or a relationship with food that you didn't appreciate in your past, how you feel now, just kind of those points to do with your story.
Sure. So I could probably go on all day, so I'm going to try to keep it short. So I actually didn't have a bad relationship with food per se when I was a kid. I was a chubby kid. I ate cookie dough and steakums and lots of macaroni and cheese, and I really didn't care. My ex-stepfather once called me fat, and I was like, yeah, and it didn't really mean anything to me. But I developed a serious problem with food by accident. I didn't diet. My mom was a dieter. My mom was a chronic exerciser. She was always eating quote unquote healthy. And I was like, yeah, that's great, but it's pizza night. So, but when I turned 13, that summer was my last year in drama camp. And every day, for some reason, my legs were breaking out with hives. Couldn't figure it out. I just had random hives on my legs. Here I am at 13. I was like the cool kid at camp, and I'm covered in Benadryl. So my mom suggested that when I was a little kid, I had an allergy test, and maybe because I had a heightened reaction to soy then, that maybe because I was eating soy now, I was somehow getting an allergic reaction. Now, the thing is, when you tell an unhealthy little kid that she's eating soy, and you know that soy is a health food, there's kind of a cognitive disconnect there. And so that was when I learned how to read food labels, because apparently soy is in a lot of things. And if you're a clean eater, you already know this. So, preaching to the choir. But so I learned how to be a clean eater specifically because I was trying to avoid having my legs break out in hives. Ironically enough, after I basically dropped down below 100 pounds, I found out that I am not allergic to soy. I'm allergic to the macadamia nuts in my shampoo. However, some wheels were set in motion that summer. because when you lose a ton of weight and you start eating healthy, people praise you, right? People who maybe in the past thought that you didn't have a lot of worth suddenly discover that you have worth now that you are thin. Certain family members started praising me, family members who had always made fun of me or made me feel bad about myself. All of a sudden were telling me how good I looked, and how good I was, and how they wish they could have my willpower. And so hearing those messages over and over started to reinforce a paradigm where clean eating, which wasn't called clean eating back then, this was 2001, so that wasn't a thing, but where clean eating, where reading the food labels and restricting your calories and getting thinner and thinner was seen as something you should aspire to. That summer, I also learned how to exercise, and that was when I began my exercise addiction as well. I was using it. I suffer from obsessive compulsive, I've never diagnosed with OCD, but with obsessive compulsive tendencies, severe anxiety and depression. And so to cope with that, I would exercise. So kind of a perfect storm, plus puberty, plus, my very first boyfriend, plus I was the cool kid at summer camp. All of it kind of converged in upon itself. And on July 4th, I put on my first big girl bikini. I was hosting a July 4th party, and all the cool kids from camp were coming over. And my first boyfriend had pecked me on the lips the day before and was coming over to this party. And I looked in the mirror and I said, whatever I'm doing, I should do more. And that was pretty much the moment that I became an anorexic. I didn't consciously decide that I was going to starve myself to death, but I did consciously decide that whatever I was doing was the right thing. And that was how I was going to build a sense of self-worth. And so for the next several years, I yo-yoed in weight. I had knee surgery and then became a cross-country runner, and then multiple stress fractures, and then went off to college and gained a ton of weight, and then started doing cleanses, and then relapsed with anorexia, and then an exercise addiction, and then, became a high school teacher and started working 90 hours a week, and then started dating a bodybuilder who convinced me that bodybuilding and clean eating was a good idea, and was re-diagnosed with anorexia, officially diagnosed with anorexia at that point. So it took about 9 years for anyone to actually say that my behaviors were causing a problem. And it was mostly because my body was shutting down. I was suicidally depressed, living with my parents and dropping out of grad school. But it was all in the name of being healthy and being praised and moral and righteous and good as a result of that health. So that's my story.
That is an incredible story. Wow. Very, very powerful. Thank you for sharing kind of where you've come from. Like within your story, like, so you hit this point of like, okay, it's been a lot of years and it's finally like, oh, well, maybe something's amiss here. Right. And you start looking at that. Pick up a little bit, like, so now you're at this point where you've kind of brought to the light that there's something amiss. What was your journey from there to body acceptance, body positivity? Like, take us there.
Sure. So the second part, that's the last 4 years, pretty much, I guess 4.5 years or so. So after I was officially diagnosed with anorexia, and I can tell you a little bit about that day. So I had amenorrhea, which meant I was not getting my period anymore. And I was seeing a dialectical behavioral therapist who said, I can't work with you. You're not, I was in such a bad place that she couldn't get through to me. There was nothing, like, she was trying her best, but nothing was working. So she sent me to a doctor because she had diagnosed me with EDNOS, which is eating disorder not otherwise specified. But I went to the doctor, and the doctor said, okay, you have bradycardia, which means that your heartbeat is slowing down to a not very safe place. You have osteopenia, which means that your bones are becoming brittle and you risk osteoporosis. And you have amenorrhea, which means you're not getting your period. All of those things mean that you could die, right? Like that you have an eating disorder, you have anorexia, even though I was eating 6 meals a day, but the way that I was exercising and the way that I was eating, I was not nourishing my body enough. And so I was officially diagnosed with anorexia, even though it presented as orthorexia or EDNOS. And, she said to me, you're not getting your period. You're however old I was. I think it was like 24, 23, 24. And she's like, you're not supposed to not be fertile. Even if you don't want children, you are not supposed to not be fertile. Like, that is not a good place for you to be right now. And something in me kind of snapped. Like, I don't want kids. I have a fur baby and I'm bad enough at taking care of her. So, so I realized though that there was something wrong, like, and there was something missing from my life and my body because I had starved it to the point where I was no longer a functioning woman. Now I have to take a moment to stress that this is not to shame anybody who has like endometriosis or PCOS or infertility, and also not to shame anybody who identifies as a woman but was not assigned female at birth. This is my personal story. This was just how I felt at the time, and I didn't understand other people's experience in the context. So I just want to put that out there because I know there are other experiences out there that maybe don't necessarily mesh with this one. So, but anyway, so for me, it was particularly heartbreaking. And so I went to Whole Foods directly after the doctor's appointment because it was down the street and it was still healthy. And I got a sandwich and I ate the bread and I ate the avocado and I ate the cheese. And I only ate half because it was like, I was so full from just that half because I hadn't had more than half a sandwich in years. But I sobbed through that whole sandwich and I forced myself to eat it because I knew that I was killing myself. I ended up, because I couldn't afford treatment. I dropped out of graduate school. I had no health insurance. I didn't have a job. So I got a job working at Apple in retail, which was kind of humbling because it was in my hometown and I used to be a high school teacher in said town. So now my students who were going off to college were buying their computer from me. But Apple forced me to get outside of myself. Working in retail and working for a company that actually cares about its customers and trains their staff to literally like probe and understand and have conversations and build rapport, I was suddenly like, I had a purpose and I was interacting with people, and it wasn't about like, I am in my head all the time. It was like, what's your problem? How can I solve it so you can have a good day? It gave me goals and something to work for. I became a mentor. And I started like helping new employees get trained. So I felt like I was finally moving forward. I felt like I was getting out of the depression a little bit, out of the anxiety, out of myself. I was still obsessively exercising and obsessively trying to go back to my weight as a bodybuilder, which was my weight as an anorexic. But something in my body had shifted at this point. My hormones were broken. And so I was gaining weight, and it scared the hell out of me. So about, I guess, half a year into working at Apple, or maybe it was almost a year into working at Apple, we had a wellness challenge. And the wellness challenge was to run. And they gave us all a Nike Plus and said, go run. And the team with, the store with the most miles run wins. So of course, exercise addict sees challenge to win. Great. This is perfect. So I was bodybuilding, doing plyometrics, and then running every morning. And eventually my tendon in my right ankle started to hurt. And at first I just thought it was nothing and I kind of kept going. But as an exercise addict, I kept going until I couldn't walk and had to go on disability. It was pretty bad. I was also scared to death of getting fat. So I figured, okay, I'm going to stop eating all this protein. I'm going to stop doing my shakes. I'm going to stop trying to bodybuild because I can't walk. What can I do? So I did a 30-day vegan Bikram yoga challenge. And I was doing Bikram yoga every single day, sometimes twice a day, and drinking pretty much nothing but green smoothies and green juices. After 30 days, I became a vegan. I was bought in. I was like, I'm there. I'm a vegan now, because that's how I'm going to get and stay thin. Of course, I'd just gotten my period back just a few months before. And 9 months into my vegan experience with horrifically scarring acne, my anxiety back, my depression back, my eating disordered behaviors back, and no period, I realized that something was wrong. I moved to California, moved back in with my mom. And I was like, all right, I'm a vegan now. And it just, I couldn't do it. After I lost my period again, I was like, this isn't working. This isn't good enough. So what can I do to get healthy? Well, my mom is a CrossFitter and she was doing paleo. So, I had ankle surgery and I read, Gary Taub's book on why we should be eating fat. And I ate my first can of tuna fish while sobbing in the cafeteria at the mall at my job, hiding because I didn't want people to know that I wasn't a vegan anymore. But eventually I became paleo. And this is kind of when things shifted for me. I started my blog. I was on disability. I couldn't walk. I had nothing to do. So I was sitting around writing. And I thought I was going to be a, like, how I healed my acne paleo writer. But the more I wrote, the story that came out wasn't how I healed my acne, because I wasn't healing my acne. But what came out was how I started to come to terms with the fact that I had an eating disorder. And so the more I wrote, the more that story started to take shape for myself. And instead of dwelling on the fact that I had an eating disorder, I had started to focus on ways to not have an eating disorder. Now, unfortunately, I was what I call now recovered enough, where a focus on paleo and food and fitness and nutrition all the time, it seems healthy, but that was my whole life. It was all I did. It was all I could think about. It was all I could talk about. And it got to the point where, I still didn't have my period back. I was trying to weight suppress. I was still exercise addicted, even if I was trying not to be. And I started to have questions. I realized that you can't paleo harder. Sometimes you have to take the thyroid medication. Sometimes you have to have the loaf of bread if you don't have celiac disease. And I started to get involved with the Health at Every Size movement. It was I sat on the sidelines of it. I asked questions. I read articles. I started to seek perspectives outside of my own. And by the time I read The Gluten Lie last summer, I was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I can't continue to try to hurt myself with food in the name of health. And so finally I abandoned all of my old beliefs, and I just said, look, I am many, many pounds heavier than I used to be, but my period is back, right? I'm on thyroid medication. Oh my God, Western medication. But I am not depressed, and my hormones are functioning properly. I'm not obsessing about nutrition, and yet all of my biomarkers or whatever are still pretty much optimal. So what was I wasting my time with before exactly? And that was kind of how I got to where I am right now. But mostly it was through questioning my beliefs and being willing to trust that I was wrong. Like, I know that that's the scariest and the hardest part, but sometimes you just have to suck it up and have a piece of bread.
Okay, so right there is something so good that I want to touch on. I know that probably one of the most life-changing questions in my life personally is, am I willing to see it another way?
Yes.
Not am I right or am I wrong? Not like, is this too scary to look at? Just like, oh, am I willing to see that? Like, what if I just looked at it, like you said, on the sidelines, just ask some questions? And I very much had that same experience, because I think when you're so in the thick of it, the idea of putting any sort of options on the table that might not lead you to being your thinnest can be so scary. Like, yes. It was like, okay, I'll do anything. I'll do anything to get over my eating disorder, as long as I can be really thin. It's like, as long as.
Yeah.
Let's delve into that a little bit, because we had kind of a great conversation over email about this question. And I asked Kyla, like, what would you want women to know? Like the biggest thing, like the biggest misunderstood thing about this idea of like positive, body image. And if you're remembering kind of our chat, let's delve into that a little bit. So what would you say that is, Kyla?
Yeah. So here's the thing about body image and what you kind of need to know about it. So one of the things that scares me is that thinness is still very much associated with health. Okay. It's not true. It's not. It's a great marketing tactic. And you can lose weight when you start different healthy behaviors, but there's not like a one-to-one correlation. And it's not like anyone who promises you X pounds in X days, it's just not possible. But what happens with a lot of body positive people or intuitive eating wellness coaches and stuff, they say, well, once you start eating intuitively, you'll just naturally drop the weight. The same way that regular coaches will, like Beachbody coaches or something will say, well, once you follow my diet, you will definitely drop the weight. And the thing is, not everyone loses weight. Like that is a fact. And it's a fact that nobody wants to hear because it doesn't sell things. And that's not a bad thing. Like, obviously, I can speak from a place of privilege. So even though my BMI is considered overweight, I'm still straight sized. I can still find clothing that fits me. I'm not stigmatized when I go out into the street. I can walk onto an airplane without getting a side eye, that kind of thing. But your sense of worth does not need to be tied to your weight, and you should not need to control your weight in order to develop that worth. That worth is also not tied at all to health, like at all to health. So it's a really hard concept to understand for a lot of people. And I know many people immediately, as soon as they hear this, they kind of like, they balk and they're like, you know what, done. I didn't want to hear the rest. I was like this for many years. But what I learned in my own recovery, and then what I call my discovery, is that I haven't lost a single pound in 2 years. Okay. I exercise multiple times a week. I'm a competitive pole dancer now. I try to eat as healthily as I can, but without obsessing about it. And at no point did my body change. And at no point did my like before and after status of my happiness change, you know, because we're all kind of conditioned to believe that, well, before I am sad and all the things don't work, and then after I am happy and all the things do work. That's not how life works. And when I came to accept that, and when I came to accept that my body as it is right now, even if it doesn't look the way I quote unquote want it to, as soon as I accepted that, it was so much easier to get the hell over it. You know, but again, I am speaking from a place of privilege, because there are people who are more overweight than I am, and I use the term overweight loosely because I hate it that, you know, that there's some kind of like normal or whatever, but there are people who do suffer actual oppression and stigma. And so I empathize, I sympathize. But, you know, I think we have to be able to have this conversation, all of us, to understand that fatness is not the enemy, and it's not necessarily tied to health.
That's really great. And I love that you bring up that point of like, it's a hard pill to swallow because it doesn't sell things. You know what I mean? Like,
not at all.
You know, because there's very much this, I mean, when I have clients that because of their healthy behaviors, or maybe not even because, like they happen to be putting healthy behaviors into their life and they happen to have lost weight as the reaction of their own individual body, how it is. You know, like sometimes people will see a before and after picture and say, you look so happy now. Look how happy you are. And it's like we have this sort of societal idea of like, that person is larger. They must be less happy than this thin person. But I can tell you, I was a lot less happy, a lot thinner. And that was a good wake up call for me too. Like when I really thought of like, cause I would imagine myself, oh, I will be so happy when I can fit into these jeans. Like I will be so happy. But wait, when I was that size before I came back here, like, was I happy? So, and just to share a little bit, like to emphasize that with my own journey, just this idea of like, you know, health versus, you know, weight or size is like when I lost the weight, I mean, I looked at a BMI chart and I said, okay, so here's my weight and here's my height. So I really care about health. So to be the very most healthy, I am going to go all the way down here, right? So I went all the way down to the very lowest healthy BMI, but then I still really didn't like look how I wanted to. And I really had this concept in my head of like, you've got your muscles and you've got your skin, and then you've got like this unhealthy padding. And the more you can get rid of it, the healthier you are. Like I really imagine like my skin stretched over my muscles is going to be like the peak of health.
Right.
And
well,
so
we're marketed that. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. And we see images that are, you know, photoshopped or, you know, just somebody who happens to have that body type or, you know, that size, whatever it is, thinking that that's possible. And I was much less healthy. Like, so I love what you say about, you know, your body hasn't changed. When I overcame my eating disorder, I gained 25 pounds pretty quickly, and it freaked me out. But I was at this place of, okay, what I'm going to do is I am going to eat healthy and do healthy things, and I'm going to let my body show up. I'm going to let my body show up however it is.
Yeah.
And I didn't gain another 20 pounds. Like I found this place where I wasn't starving anymore. And my body is healthier with a little more of that lovely padding that gives me those nice earthy curves that are just
Right.
actually me.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's really great. So how can how can women, as they're kind of going through this process of like, okay, I don't know exactly what my body's going to do because it's
Mhm.
not necessarily always tied, to health. Like, what is maybe a helpful process or some questions for the people watching to think of when they're trying this on, right? Asking questions from the sideline to kind of feel more okay about this. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So this is maybe one of the hardest things, and it's kind of a twofold situation. Okay. So the first bit is, so I let me back up. So I have a philosophy, right? I have philosophy, there's recovery, right? And then there's the thing that comes after recovery. So it really depends on where you are. So we'll start with recovery. Recovery is when you're actually like going through it, right? You are going through the thick of things. You are going through the eating disorder, the disordered eating. You're tracking, you're counting, you're looking in the mirror. Everything is about your body, right? And so you are probably in your period of either restriction or binging, right? Or purging. And you may need help from an actual, like a therapist, a coach, a doctor, a nutritionist, whatever. And in that period, the only thing that you can do is surrender. Okay. Like this is something that you don't want to hear. I know it. I already know, and it's like, but I don't know. Yes, you do. You do know how to surrender. You know how you do that? You don't do anything. You surrender. You eat the food. You cry it out. You find support. You make sure that you are not ever, ever unsafe. This is something that I really want to emphasize. Do not make yourself unsafe while you cry it out. You're only allowed to be uncomfortable during this period, okay? If you're ever in a situation where you are unsafe, please reach out for help, whether that is from medical help, like someone in your family, loved ones, etc. Just have to preface it with that. But in recovery, you have to learn how to eat again, okay? So after you've gotten through the period where you're crying on the floor because, somebody made you eat more calories, right? Or the period where you ate more calories and you didn't purge them, etc. Then you have to learn how to eat again. You have to just do it, right? You have to learn how to be accountable for making sure that you get enough nourishment. You do have to learn how to exercise or exercise effectively and safely and take breaks and all of that. Recovery is really important. You don't want to miss this step. This is a period where you do get to be like focused on your body and getting used to it. But again, this is a period of surrender. Okay. Your thighs are going to touch in a different way and it's going to freak you out and you're going to have to surrender. Your clothing's going to fit in a different way and it's going to freak you out. And guess what? Surrender. Okay. Buy new clothes, get rid of the old ones. Do not keep the skinny jeans, like throw them out. I don't care. Donate them, give them to somebody. Do not keep them in your closet as a reminder. Okay. Get off the Pro Anna, the Thinspo, the Fitspo. You don't need it. Surrender. Okay. Then the fun part starts. Okay. After you've gotten to the point where you are actually mostly eating normally and like able to go to a restaurant without seeing the menu beforehand, or at least not having a panic attack, right? Like you can leave the house without a protein bar and it's not the end of the world. Okay, we've gotten to this point. We've surrendered. Your body's just going to be your body and you just have to deal with it. Journal it out. I don't care. Just deal with it. Then you get to what I call discovery. Okay, this is the fun part. And this is the part where you stop focusing on your body. It's really hard because, what happens is like, I know I have listeners who have been with me for like, all 4.5 years or whatever that I've been writing. There are people who are probably watching your show every week. There are people who are, in Summer Innanen's group and following, Sarah Vance and Maddie Moon and Isabel Fox and Duke, and they're so excited about body. Guess what? Sometimes you have to just like come back to it. Take a step back. Let's stop focusing on our bodies so much. This period of discovery is about learning who you are, whether, in your body, whether your thighs touch or don't, whether you gained weight or didn't, whether you changed your clothes or didn't. This is the period where you stop thinking about your body. How do you do that? Well, not right away, because you've trained your brain to think about it for however many years. I still get caught on days where I'm just like thinking about my body. Guess what? It's been 4 years since I recovered from my eating disorder and I still do it. Okay. But it's not every day and it's not all the time, because I've trained myself to think about other things I care about, like stand-up comedy and politics and pole dance and burlesque. Um, I've developed friendships that don't have anything to do with people at my gym or the nutrition that I follow or the exercise I believe in. I follow people on Twitter that have nothing to do with body image at all. You know what I mean? I have, I have my dog who I can go on walks on, and not to burn calories, but to go out and be on a walk with my dog, right? I have friends that I can call and not have a single conversation about a calorie. So the answer sucks because there's no easy one, right? Part one, surrender. Part two, stop thinking about your body. And it's all the stuff you do around surrendering and not thinking about your body that are actually going to make the difference. Does that make sense? I hope that's a good answer.
It makes so much sense. Okay, so one thing that I love about just, talking to other, women who are plugged in with this, or just like intelligent people who have thought of things, like, is it kind of gives you language for your own experience. Like, I love when we're like, oh my gosh, like, that's me, that's how I feel. So for instance, when you were talking about like, kind of developing this food thing by accident, just kind of tracking back to there, I feel like a lot of us, we have behaviors in our life like, wow, I'm like really freaked out about food, or like I'm like eating huge amounts of food and I don't know why.
Yeah.
And I know for me, it took me years to have language for that. Like, oh, binge eating is a thing. Like people do that. Like I didn't realize it. So I love it because I know, just thinking about just my own journey, Kyla, is like, oh, now I have language for that thing that happened, like,
yeah.
So like you said, the discovery phase. So, to kind of emphasize what you were saying with just an example of, my journey through it, is like, there really is, and I coach women on this all the time. Like, I feel like there's this personality trait that maybe lends itself to this kind of obsessive, like, okay, tell me what to do and I'll do it perfectly. As long as I do it perfectly, I'll get perfect results, right?
Yeah.
We're like, okay, I'm going to do body image positivity perfectly. So let me get out my journal and make sure I, write my list and get my app to track it. Right. And it's really so much more, which it's not a comfortable feeling for, especially if you've been obsessed with things.
Yeah.
Of like letting go. Like you will recover more by doing less.
Yes.
Like it's not about caring about food more. It's really about caring about food less, or caring about your body less. And when I say care less, I just mean like you said, the surrender, the letting go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think what's really important to emphasize is that one of the biggest pieces of resistance that especially the anorexic or orthorexic mind will put up to specifically the phrase care less is that, you mean be unhealthy? I can't do that. And that is not what we're saying to do. Here's the deal. And first of all, if you choose to be unhealthy, that is 100% your, like, do it. Like, there's no body policing going on here. I don't care. Like, you do you. But if you do want to be healthy, that's your like goal. Being healthy is completely different from optimizing, which is what we now sell as being healthy. Okay. You can eat without a meal plan. You can eat food that isn't 100% organic, perfect. You're not going to die of cancer tomorrow because of it. And, obviously, if you have some kind of horrible illness, don't eat the things that make you sick. Like, that's the basis of it. But in general, okay, reading articles about whether or not eggs are safe today is not going to make you healthier. Reading articles about whether or not chocolate's going to be good for your bioflavonoids, or whether it's going to cause cancer, that's not useful to you. Okay. Again, if you've got some kind of illness, obviously pay attention to that. If you have celiac, don't eat bread. Like, I'm not talking about that, but eating healthy is really not that hard. You just need to relearn how to make decisions about food, and let go when those decisions don't necessarily mesh up with the latest press release that you read. One of the things that frustrates me a lot about many of the people who've reached out to me is that, it's like, guys, you heard what I said, but I saw you reposting on Instagram that giveaway for a paleo thing. If you are truly invested in your own health, stop being so invested in quote unquote health. Okay. You don't need to, like, you already know how to eat paleo. Don't follow. You don't need to follow. You're done. You know, if you're a vegan, you already know how to eat vegan. You don't need to read about the latest vegan superfood. You just eat your acai bowl or whatever and have a good day. Like, you're allowed to do that without obsessing about it. Does that make sense? I don't want to sound like shamey or anything, but I just want to emphasize that you don't need someone to tell you how to be healthy. You, of all people, audience, probably already know. You know?
No, that's great. And I think there is so much intuition that we already know, but I feel like there are so many things being sold to us that like, no, you don't know. Actually,
Exactly.
you need to do it the right way. And this is the right way and you've got to align with it.
Mm-hmm.
So just a couple of things that I think would be great to bring up here is
Yes.
for those of you who follow my videos, you'll recognize the term like the chatter, right? Like you said, like the, you know, the fears that we have, you know, like that, the chatter in your brain that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, kind of, you know, fights back with that idea of like, well, I have to care, right? I have to be
Right.
healthy. So I just want to like the best way to really, you know, have something like just to like deal with it is not by like, you know, squashing it down. You know, it's like if you really want to not be scared, then get under the bed and like look underneath and make sure there's not a monster. Like that
Mm-hmm.
is the best way to just like face it and like put it out there. So I just
Exactly.
yeah, I would just want to lay out a few things that we may be hearing as chatter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, you know, Kyla's talking about, well, you know, maybe letting go or surrendering. So I know that one, you know, point of chatter that comes up a lot is, okay, well, I'm not okay with my body how it is. So if I accept my body, then my body will never change. And it's like this terrifying thought of like, I can't accept this because I'm not okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to tell you from so much experience with so many women, your body will be more likely to be healthier or for you to feel more comfortable in it when you do actually accept it as it is.
Right.
Us not accepting it will actually fight against us. And then the other thing is like you were talking about just being healthy and not needing to like have all of these food rules. Um, I think a lot of us have this chatter of like, if I really let myself just like not have a structure, just eat healthy, I would go insane. Like I would just eat everything and piles of donuts until I just pass out and die.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, like, try it. Like one day's not going to
Exactly.
kill you. Like I have had women just like mind blown. Like, oh my gosh, I just said, you know what? I can eat whatever I want and I'm not going to have food rules anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I just like, I ate some fruit and vegetables and protein and then like, you know, maybe had like one cookie, but I didn't eat the whole box. Like, and they're just like amazed at how much they can actually trust themselves. So just wanted to bring out a couple of those like points of chatter that might be going through our head. Cause for a lot, I know that like when I first heard things like this, it was like sobbing. I was like emotional because it's hard to deal with. So wanted to bring those up. So
Yeah. Well, and it's hard to deal with because we've invested so much of our identities in needing to be right about nutrition and needing to follow rules and needing to have those rules. And when you don't have them anymore, it is scary. It is so scary. It's like paying taxes for the first time as a grown up. Okay. Like you don't, what if I mess it up? What if the IRS comes after me, like for the $2 that I forgot to report? What do you do with donation slips? What if I spend all of my money and I am never rich again? Like it's literally the same exact feeling. And I want to also say that there are some people who are going to go without food rules and are going to have a couple days of binging. And I will say that, you know, there was a point in my life where I was eating 10 pounds of grapes a day. And I was like, why isn't this stopping? Why am I not, like, why can't I stop? I can't stop. And you know what it was? It wasn't about the grapes. It wasn't about the food. It wasn't not about having the rules. It was about the stuff that was going on underneath that was causing me to want to eat all the time. It was one, the belief that I still needed to be restricting. I still needed to have a certain kind of body. I still had to prove everything. So I had rules without having any rules. And then, you know, there was always like that start over on Monday mentality, like, oh, well, this will be the last time I buy grapes, you know, that kind of thing. But two, it was dealing with the other stuff underneath. Like every eating disorder presents differently. Okay. And everyone has different experiences and different body types and all of that stuff. So we can treat the eating disorder or the disordered eating if you're just a yo-yo dieter who's chronically, you know, working on that. You can treat any of that and we can break down how to like stop hating your body and how to eat food and all of that stuff. But if you don't treat like the stuff underneath, if you don't actually address that stuff, which has nothing to do with your body, you're not going to get better. Like, I can say this from experience because it wasn't until I got out of a very toxic situation that I was able to put the grapes down, you know? And as soon as I did, it was like, oh, that's why I'm eating. That's why I can't feel my hunger anymore, because I'm so busy trying to bury my feelings and numb myself with food that I'm not able to actually, because, you know, I couldn't address at the time. I was in a situation where I couldn't address it. You know, once I let that go, it was suddenly like, oh, okay, I can feel this feeling again, and it doesn't feel so bad. And if I had just worked on that feeling in the moment, perhaps I would have spared myself a lot of terrible stomach aches, you know? But I want to say, like, this isn't like something that some expert on high is talking about. This is like somebody who within the last 4 years has binged on grapes. You know what I mean? Like, we go through it, and that's why we're talking about it, because we're on the other side for today. Who knows?
Yeah, no, and I love that idea of like, okay, you know, because a lot of times we have this all or nothing mentality of like, okay, and now I'm done. Like, I mean, I binged a lot very often, and I haven't binged for a long time now.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? If I binge tomorrow, that doesn't break me. That doesn't mean anything. It just means like, oh, there's probably something I should look at, like in my between my ears, like my brain.
Yeah.
Like, I love it. It's not even like the outside in. Like, I'm gonna have this perfect body, and it's gonna heal my brain. It's like, you know what? Like, you get in a good psychological space.
Mm-hmm.
Be willing to see things another way. Like, try some things on. Like, you know, work on that acceptance. And then guess what? Like, you know, the physical stuff is just okay, and it follows. And I never imagined. I always thought like, okay, well, I'll get healthy, and then I'll just, you know, have this really great body. But it was more like, I'll just get mentally healthy and then realize like, oh, it's okay to have thighs. Like,
Yeah.
that's a cool thing.
Absolutely. And, you know, I mean, this is why discovery is so important, because during that process, you figure out what you need, right? You know, recovery is all about like just dealing with the food issues. And that's important, you know, like, because I think when you're in it, you can't see that it's about something else. Like and so if you're in it and you're like, I know, but it's still about the food, great. Then you need recovery right now, and that's cool. Deal with the food issues, learn coping behaviors, break those patterns, etc. But when it gets down to it, when it comes time to not relapsing, one of the reasons why people relapse often is because they stay in the mindset that they are in recovery and that they are prone to relapse, that they will constantly be walking that thin line. And what happens is when you stop identifying as in recovery, when you stop saying, I am definitely still always forever sick, that you can start doing the other work. At least this is my view. I know that there are different schools of thought, but this is what worked for me, and it's something that you can try on if it works for you. When I started saying I am recovered, and then there was this giant gaping hole in my personality because I had gotten rid of my food podcasts and my nutrition and the fitness stuff, and I let my NASM thing lapse, and I got out of Fitfluential, and I was like, all the things I care about are gone. What do I do now? You know? And that was when I learned how to sit with myself and also figure out who in the heck I was. And when you do that work, the discovery work, yes, you might still relapse or think about relapsing, because I want you to understand that like at no point in like full recovery does your brain ever fully forget what it's like to be there, right? It's not you will always still have the experience of having some kind of disorder in your life. And that's not a bad thing. What it is that in discovery, you've worked your muscles enough so that you also have muscle memory of not being disordered. So when, for example, this is something that happened to me when, you know, I like to understand like what's going on in the minds of clients and friends and things like that when new diets come up. So some new paleo style diet came up and a friend of mine is doing it. And I went over to the sales page and I started reading it. And by the end of it, I was like, if I click this button and spend $20, I might be able to get an optimally lean body once again. And I was going through the mindset and I was literally like, my finger was like about to click. And I was just like, what the hell am I doing? And I was like, nope, and clicked out of the page. That's the difference between recovery and not recovery. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
but you can recognize it because you've been on the other
yes.
side of it. You're like, oh, wait, it's that way that I used to feel
Mhm.
before this way that I feel, and I feel so much better now. Like,
Exactly.
yeah,
And
you
it's
can
like
compare.
it's not like it went away and I wasn't still thinking about it, and like but I know how to work through it and what to do instead. So for me, what to do instead is to like go watch a pole dance number on YouTube, or, reach out to a friend and be like, hey, what's up? Let's talk about something really trivial, or, go watch Doctor Who with my boyfriend or something. Like, do something else.
Yeah.
Do the things that fulfill you instead of trying to fit your body into some healthy ideal because somebody on the internet told you that was a good idea.
Yeah. And I love the idea of just like kind of stepping away from all the things that make you feel that way. Like, not that you can never go back to this great, collection of pictures that, you feel will inspire you. But like,
Right.
if it's making you feel like you need to do something extreme that will not serve you, like
Right.
logically, then just step away from it for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And Kyla, I love the idea of the two phases of like, recovery and then discovery, because sometimes it's just about like, hey, let's focus on this thing and like feel better for a second and get this under control, and then we can move on to this other thing. It doesn't have to
Right.
be all at the same time, because I feel like there's this temptation to like, okay, well, if I'm going to recover, I'm going to do all the psychological work, and I'm going to do all the like, I'm going to eat perfectly. And it's like,
Right.
how about we don't do it all at once? Like, let's just let your body show up how it is, and like get rid of the thunderstorm here. And then we
Mm-hmm.
can start planting the flowers afterwards. You know what I mean? Like, we
Totally.
can improve after like we stop the craziness.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I wasn't there for 4 years, guys. Took a long time, and being able to show up and be in my body and be okay with my thighs touching, and learning how to deal with walking into a store and not buying a size extra small, and having breasts and figuring out how to maneuver around them. Like, that is all really scary and hard, especially if you're coming from restrictive eating with severe fat phobia. And another thing that actually really helped with that was learning how to see other people's bodies without disgust. Because it's really, I mean, it's very easy to hate yourself if you're busy hating other people too. And so one of the things that I really strove to do in my period of recovery and discovery was to seek out other people's bodies and to understand body diversity, and to train my brain to see bodies not as something to be fixed, but as bodies, period. Neutral. You don't even have to love them. You don't have to think they're attractive. You don't want to, have to want to sleep with them. You just need to see them as neutral. And when you can view other bodies as neutral, it may not right away, like, you're not immediately going to be like, so my body's neutral too. But it will help you so that when you start to see images of yourself, whether that's in the mirror or a picture that somebody tagged on Facebook, it will help you to condition you, at least, to understand neutrality. So that you can approach it not with dread and horror, but at least just with no feelings. You don't have to love it. I think body acceptance is a really hard concept, because people think that you have to like be writing like sonnets to your thighs and like odes to your cellulite. You don't have to. You don't have to love your body. I'm absolving you right now. You don't have to love your body. Just feel no feelings. If you can get to no feelings about your body, you're already doing it right. Like, that's maybe the hardest thing you can overcome. And then who knows, as you start to use your body in ways that make you feel great, and you learn what pleasure is again in life, not just, like in sex, in food, in movement, etc., like actual pleasure, without guilt, without moralizing, because again, it's all neutral. Once you get to that point, you might actually find that you're like, hey, I kind of love this vehicle that's carrying my soul around, and you don't even have to, I'm like agnostic, but that's how I view it, and it works for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. And I feel like getting, or working toward that neutral place, it's like, I know for me, like, you can't really see the things that you love about your body until you kind of have a clean slate to find out the things that you love. Like,
Right.
now I can say, okay, well, I don't really think this part of my body is necessarily attractive, but I don't look at it and break out into tears and have all this judgment and be emotionally charged about it. Like, it's just like, I notice it. I don't like, I'm not horrified. Like, and that's, it's such a big deal. Like, seriously, to like, food is not a big deal. And like the shape of my body is not a big deal. Like, I was just talking to my husband the other day and I'm like, oh my gosh, my life is so good. Like, it's amazing.
Isn't it a good feeling?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It's incredible to just like go throughout the day and not have anything that can just like set you off to dread. That's just within this, you know, you eat every day, you live in your body every day, like make friends with those things. And like, life is pretty cool. So
yeah, it really is. And it's not easy. Like, I want to say, like, you're probably like watching the video and you're like, okay, I figured it out. So this is the thing I'm going to try this week. Give it time. This is something, I mean, this is why we have coaches, because it's not easy to do. It's not easy to do on your own. Trust me, I had to white knuckle this for like how many years? You know, this is why we seek help and communities of people who are body positive, who believe in health at every size, who are willing to be there for you to cry on, and also to celebrate your body neutrality victories, you know? But don't expect it to all happen today. And even when you're already in it and things are good, there's still going to be days where you're like, I've failed the universe.
And it's okay, and it's all fine, and you know, I love that. So thank you so much. I have enjoyed this conversation a lot.
Me too.
I've learned some beautiful things, and thank you for being on. Anything else that just comes to your mind that you'd be like, I wish I would have said that before we wrapped up?
Oh man, there's so many things. I think the bit about finding body neutrality and being open to other people's bodies without judgment is a really big deal. One of the things that really helped me was going to burlesque shows. And I would encourage you as a burlesque dancer now, go to a burlesque show and go watch people celebrating their bodies. Just watch people of every size, every shape, every ability, taking their clothes off and the people in the audience cheering no matter what. Okay. And then go home with that burlesque audience in your head. And you don't have to strip for anybody. You don't even have to ever do burlesque yourself, but just go to a burlesque show. Do me that favor. Let me know how that goes, because that was a game changer for me. So
I love that. That is such a fun idea. And Kyla does burlesque shows in the Bay Area. Like, if somebody wanted to see your show, like, how would they do that?
If you go to my website, performingwoman.com, and then /dance, I have my schedule there. You can usually get tickets. I perform the second Tuesday of every month at the Elbow Room for Bombshell Betty's All Kinds of Sexy Benefit show. I think like every 2 months or so at the San Jose Improv for Bad Influences Burlesque. And then there's several shows coming up, like the Hubba Hubba Review and Diva or Die. So if you just go to the website, it's all there.
So fun. And again, I want to point you back to a couple of websites. So the performingwoman.com, like was mentioned, and then the findingyourhunger.com. And I'll put links to those in the show notes as well. So Kyla, thank you so much for being on. This has been incredible. Go and read her stuff and like work on your journey, and don't turn this off and say, okay, now I've got my 13-step plan to be perfect at this. Like, just like surrender and like let it happen. And if you want some more help with any sort of disordered eating, you can go to lydiawente.com. I have a free ebook, How to Stop Binge Eating. Pretty straightforward, and you can just get it for free, and you can download it from your inbox. And I would be happy to hear from you. And let us know what other questions or thoughts you have, or just an update about your own journey. If you want to try some of these things on with your body positivity, body image, body neutrality, whatever you want to call it, journey, we'd love to hear more from you. Thank you again. And yeah, let's keep in touch and talking. And this is such an important thing, I think, for women all over the world, and men, everyone,
Yes.
and everyone in between.
Absolutely. Right, thank you so much.
All right. Mwah. Bye.